Hi, I'm Chris Mach, Director of Workplace Strategy and Planning for AT&T Global Real Estate. So how have the events of the past 2 years influenced our workplace strategy? Well, I think the question is, how have they not? We were forced to go into a highly virtualized environment for our knowledge workers. Mother is the invention of necessity, but it's notable that we were in a very distributed environment, workplace environment before. Also mentionable is 33% of our employees were essential. And I attribute a lot of the success of getting through the pandemic for our network guys and our competing companies for keeping the bandwidth and the decision-making lights on. And part of our concern was the community, the connection, basic psychology of work that was happening. Our HR folks and our C-suite paid a lot of attention in making sure that our employees, even in that what is a stressful and highly virtualized environment, had resources and programs to reach out to, utilize, and even co-developed amongst themselves. So the new challenges that this presents. We can talk about it in 3 major categories from my perspective. We probably talk about it for a long time. The first one is there's a definite war that's continuing for talent, and that's only been exacerbated by the pandemic. The next thing is, for folks in my profession, how do we pivot to re-rationalize, yet again, our portfolio to accommodate for hybrid work? And so the third point here is we really have to take a look at what are the appropriate ecosystems, where work takes place, in what type of use cases, in order for us to provide the best platforms for work. I can speak for my group, noting that we're an extraordinarily large organization. So for my group, I have a set of essential employees as well as folks that were highly virtualized. And what's really developed and changed is the need to develop a softer skill set, to have that understanding and empathy, to look at virtual cues, and to develop programs that don't necessarily rely on the physical workspace. Now, on the flip side, for my essential employees, we had to pay careful attention as to what they were doing, what types of PP&E they needed to deploy, and all the safety protocols that were in place. That since has subsided a little bit, but I think everybody's worked into a natural norm. The factors that we take into account when planning our future workplace needs coincides with the occupancy personas that the corporation developed. 1 is office, 2 is virtual, and 3 is a flex category. Part of that has to do with what sort of demand or oncoming demand will be needed for space, how that space will perform, what we have to adjust not only in the physical space but on the softer supporting sides, whether it's an IT-based support or it's even amenities and safety protocols, health assurances. So that's part of it. Our needs have changed as well as far as what we're looking at in terms of physical sizing of the portfolio, where preference locations are, developing ways for virtual meetings to be more inclusive of those who are on the periphery. Most of our meetings in the past and now predominantly in the future are going to be with participants within a corporate campus, also involving people from home and potentially third workplaces. So we pay a lot of keen attention with our IT partners. We outsource to some of the largest names in the world to make sure that this type of meeting experience makes everyone feel included. It's not an easy challenge, but it's something we're exploring every day. Where we have risk factors in making new decisions for our workplace program is especially not knowing where to make our bets. We've got portfolio decisions that are coming up continually, and workplace decisions as to what to invest where with a limited amount of resources. The one thing that's key to that is to retain a high degree of flexibility. That's either within your portfolio positioning and rationalization, or it's within the future fit out of what you're doing within people spaces. Part of that also has to do with the unknown. You don't want to expend a lot of money only to know that it wasn't the right bet. So our biggest risk is where to make our bets. We do that through data, through evidence, and it's a continual iteration. I don't think anybody knows the exact future of this, but we've got some good key indicators. Some new components of making decisions about the workplace toward the future is where do we need to foster community? Where do we need to access talent? How do we need to bring people together, whether in virtual or in an in-person context, And how is that most appropriately met with our portfolio, or perhaps with another platform such as third workplaces, or even if we're connecting people from the home to either of those. And so that's a big consideration. That's going to involve a lot of planning and a lot of data collection and gathering. And it also is something that we're going to look at throughout the next 2 to 5 years. One of the questions directors of workplace strategy get is how we see the new workspace, the hybrid workplace, supporting the new behaviors of work. And in some cases, you see a lot of talk about it's more of a binary equation. It's just for collaborative work. It's just for meeting and purpose-driven activities. Where on the same side, we see a lot of normal behavior. People that were working from home for 18 months just want to come in and work. So I think that sort of binary either or is a myth. What we're going to see is a little bit of a potpourri of activity, and we're going to have to take a look at our presence data. We'll have to do some surveying. We'll have to really analyze what behaviors are taking place within space. We could go on for hours of prognosticating about what that footprint is going to look like as far as physical space configuration, some of the softer supports that are enabled with that, whether it's workplace apps or even amenities that are associated with returning to work. But I think what's most common is it's going to be a little bit of a messy process. Flexibility is key. Making limited bets and iterating going forward, that's key. And as we look forward, we're going to make sure that we study the activity first and watch it over a period of time before we jump to too early of a bet. In addition to the question of how do we see the format of the workplace and workplace strategy changing during return to work after the pandemic, is that the portfolio is going to be even smaller than folks think, I believe. It's going to be complemented in many areas by co-working and serviced officing and on-demand platforms. It's going to have a higher proportion of collaborative and meeting spaces, but it won't be dominated by that activity. Our current guess is 50-50. We still see demand for people coming back and just doing focused work or having more traditional behaviors. Knowledge workers are essentially making decisions within space, and we're finding that post-pandemic, you can do that anywhere. So to the degree that we can make those decisions faster, better, cheaper, more socially conscious and sustainable, we're doing our job. We're providing a tool set. And our tool set now consists of home, the campus, and the on-demand office. So I'm often asked what new ways of thinking are involved with solutioning the new workplace. And I'm not quite sure it's brand new. There's been a lot of revalidation of things we already knew, but since we were forced into the virtual context, now they've come to light as viable. And so we really do have to pay attention to reducing friction from the various workplaces that people are in, whether it's the home, a third workplace, or the campus. You have to pay keen attention to the psychological impact that the pandemic had, some of the social needs, some of the community needs that have long been evaporated over 18 months. And so when you think of new thinking, it's not really new, it's just re-emphasizing some of those softer skill sets and combining them with the most frictionless access to doing work as possible. And between the campus, the home, and the third workplace, often as co-working or service officing, developing programs behind that and supporting that infrastructure is newer. So there's probably dozens of key learnings. For the sake of time, I think I'm going to share two. For the enterprise customer, one pragmatic and then one just general direction. The pragmatic one is pay attention to the small things like parking and access to safe public transportation. It matters. It matters for adoption, usability, perception. That's key, and I think that's sometimes lost when it comes to the corporate end user. As far as more of a broader direction, the sooner one gets to experimenting with their enterprise as to how serviced office, co-working, on-demand office could fit in their portfolio, the more they are ahead of the game in finding the use cases that apply. It could only be 2 to 5% of your portfolio offering, but it's an important 2 to 5%. It's the one that makes the difference in removing that friction or providing the redundancy to the home or campus that you may need. And really, that's essentially the piece of advice, is to explore your enterprise and where it may apply, because each enterprise is unique. And I think as people look at this potential platform, they'll find a variety of solutions that are cheaper, more convenient, and reduce that friction to getting to work. What influences our folks from working from home or coming into an AT&T campus, beyond the obvious, the pandemic, is that we've gone through, with leadership and each business unit lead, an assessment of how people's work behaviors match with where they work. So each business unit lead developed a profile of their workforce to say, this is a set of office workers, here's a set of flex, and here are the people that can qualify for virtual. That's based upon past behavior, it's based upon job role, it's based upon leadership role. There's a variety of factors that take place. But AT&T took it upon itself early in the pandemic to develop these three categories and to match, via each business unit lead, those particular categories. Real common question I cover with my peers in benchmarking groups is, how do we accommodate for virtual attendees within hybrid work meetings? It's a difficult problem to solve. It's a big challenge. There's obviously going to be a lot more attention paid to the hub meeting area, as well as the technology sort of partnerships that you have within your company in order for that distributed audience to have as robust of an experience as possible. We're partnered with some of the largest names in tech, that's no secret. I've got folks on my staff that are continually evaluating this question. And it is our goal to be as inclusive of those who are working from home, possibly working from a shared workplace site, to have the most robust experiences possible. So that's going to be a lot more attention with technology, and it's also going to be behavioral and coaching. There's going to need to be some programs that don't just focus the conversation on the folks in the room, that actively coach members of teams to include folks that are outside of the room. And that's going to evolve over time. We're just in the development stages of the AT&T Ondemand Workspace program. We've partnered with a firm that has an online portal. We've got several use cases of on-demand space. So one of them, for example, would be in underserved markets where we've closed down an office building. They've got two choices: to work from home, or they can leverage our on-demand office platform. In other places, we're actually looking towards a serviced office provider versus a conventional lease. We want to make shorter term bets. We want to make a year less, 2 years or less. And we've negotiated and implemented a few of those deals. I think there are a number of use cases that we used in the past and will probably uncover going forward, whether it's using it for swing space, using it for infrequent meeting space, looking at scrum meetings or training type of activities that are only point in time. But the one thing that we have is a consistent place to go to access all of these types of use cases of space and procure them on demand. How can employees be empowered to utilize these on-demand platforms? It takes a little bit of discipline and work with the business units. Some business units apply to working in this manner more so than others. We also developed a technology that's accessible to each one of our employees with a partner liquid space. So we got past the single sign-on hurdles, corporate security requirements, which are extensive, and the contractual needs. We're setting up interviews with each one of the business units in surveys. And we're looking at developing a fairly robust communication campaign to explain what the myriad of use cases are and what's AT&T supportable according to our code of business conduct and what is not. One of the unique things about this platform is we're able to control, filter, and offer only those venues that we think are appropriate. That's exciting. We're also able to develop controls around cost, always very important to our finance folks, and rule sets that comply with our code of business conduct, which I mentioned earlier. I'm often asked, what does a successful hybrid workplace program look like? To me, for the benefit of the employees and the greater organization. It's evidence-based. It's highly flexible. It's focused on coming out of the pandemic during the return to work era and recognizing the supports needed for community, needed for health and wellness, for inclusivity. So developing programs isn't just about the place. It's about some of the softer support structures. Real estate, corporate real estate for people space is just a tool set. We need to be able to provide new workplace platforms configured in a manner where we have a new set of tools that most optimize return to work post-pandemic. That will include a smaller segment of the portfolio to be serviced offices, co-working, on-demand office. But it will also include changing our campuses a little bit to have more collaborative work. It'll also look at optimizing the tool sets we have for virtual work to making the folks from home that are deciding to work from home feel like they're part of the campus experience. So the short answer to this is it's much more than the campus tool sets of architecture and technology. It's recognizing all the facets of work and understanding that workplace strategists have to support that or be very cognizant of that. What I'm proud of for our organization, not only myself, but my leadership and corporate real estate as an organization, is that we've developed this into a new platform. It used to be used as a small tool set for side activities, but this is now a formal third leg of the stool from work from home, the campus, and now for a variety of on-demand office activities. It'll be nascent, it'll be small at first, but it's a formal program. And I think that's a first for our organization. So I'm often asked, how did you get started with developing this platform and this capability? And outside of having somebody that's an advocate for this or is impassioned by it, we look towards those organizations that are most suited. The sales organization, the marketing organization, folks that are already, frankly, perhaps working within these environments or have clients that invite them into these organizations. I'd start there.